And there's so much misinformation. Do this little diet or this hack, or you should fast or eat only meat or do this or do that. And everybody's looking for this quick fix. And I always tell my patients, it's not really sexy or mind-blowing, that what you need is a diet that is really anti-inflammatory, high in fruits and vegetables. And I think that we see this huge trend of talking about protein, which of course is important, but I would say that fiber is even more important.
Welcome to the EMPWR Podcast, where wellness meets real life and empowerment becomes your way of being. I'm your host, Sam. Hi guys, today I am thrilled to have a special guest with us, Dr. Natalie Crawford, an expert in nutrition and hormone health. Dr. Crawford brings a wealth of knowledge about how our daily nutrition profoundly influences hormone balance, especially for women. With a unique focus on active women and athletes, she reveals the consequences of underfueling and what that means hormonally for our bodies. And for anyone who's ever faced issues with their cycle, as I have, having lost my period for 13 months, this episode is especially for you. We dive into the critical role nutrient-rich foods, healthy fats, and fiber play in supporting hormonal balance. You'll get actionable tips to protect your hormones, from smart supplement choices to simple swaps that reduce endocrine disruptor exposure and inflammation. From fertility, protecting your cycle, planning a family, or navigating midlife changes, this episode is a must listen. So let's dive in. Hello, Dr. Natalie Crawford.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh my goodness, thank you for being here. Full transparency, when I first started this podcast and I had like my guest wish list, you were in my top 10. So this is so surreal having you here in front of me, but also to my listeners and my following on Instagram. I have like put up question boxes before asking like, hey, who would you guys like to have come on the podcast? And you've always been like a top one in there. So
I'm thrilled to be here. Truly, truly. And that means so much to me. Like, you can make me cry. It's minute one into the podcast.
Well, I'm really excited to dig into everything like fertility, hormone health, nutrition, because like that's a big part of hormone health.
Yes.
I think for me, being a nutritionist, I've seen how much good and proper nutrition can impact hormone health. So I really would love to like get started right off the bat and kind of talk about that. When it comes to hormone health, what would you say is the most important when it comes to daily nutrition to optimize top state of hormone health?
I love it. I think one of the important things, and I know you feel this way too, is really not thinking of things in short term, but is trying to get your body to a level of almost homeostasis, meaning everything's functioning normally. When we think about hormone health, we have to think about multiple organ systems are working together. So your brain is sending out signals to your ovaries, which have to send out signals back to your brain, to your uterus. And when we look at what interferes here, a few different things can interfere with this process. And that's really what we're trying to target or optimize when it comes to nutrition. Really, one of the biggest things is that inflammation can interfere with this process. So when you have a lot of inflammation, the brain interprets that in a few different ways. One is, I almost like to think about it as static. Inflammation is static, interfering with the brain's ability to interpret the hormone signals from the ovary. They're static on the radio. The brain's not going to be able to send out things appropriately. In addition to that, the brain's going to interpret your body's not maybe at a great sense or a great place to get pregnant if those inflammation levels are going up or if you're in a big calorie deficit. And so we have to really think about this as the culmination of everything, because to your body, we have to think about the body evolutionary. The point of the menstrual cycle and the point of making hormones is to help you get pregnant. Whether you want to get pregnant or not, we all want to have our hormones working the best. But if your body's wanting a sign that you're in good health to get pregnant, it's going to interpret some of this inflammation as a sign that you're not. So when we think about inflammation, this is going to dive into, if you're overweight, we know that fat cells, in addition to making hormones, also are inflammatory. We know that if you're stressed, cortisol is inflammatory. And we know if you take in ultra-processed foods or you have a lot of insulin resistance, extra sugar in your body, that itself is inflammatory too. In addition to the gut being that gatekeeper for nutrients, toxins. When you don't have good gut health, you're going to have higher inflammatory levels, and this is going to interfere with hormone dysfunction. So nutrition and gut health is really one of the keys to this, and it's so hard online. And there's so much misinformation. Do this little diet or this hack, or you should fast or eat only meat or do this or do that. And everybody's looking for this quick fix. And I always tell my patients, it's not really sexy or mind-blowing, that what you need is a diet that is really anti-inflammatory, high in fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables have a lot of fiber. And I know you love fiber, right?
I love me some fiber.
And I think that we see this huge trend of talking about protein, which of course is important, but I would say that fiber is even more important because it is what's going to feed those healthy gut microbiome.
Absolutely.
It's going to help, which is where your estrogen is metabolized. So we need good fiber, and fiber only really comes from those fruits and vegetables. Your animal-based protein sources do not have fiber at all. So when we start to think about the building blocks of a diet, I always say the very first thing you're going to have to do is eat more fruits and vegetables than most people actually do. Right? And when we eat more fruits and vegetables, what we're doing is increasing good, healthy nutrients, a lot of antioxidants, we're increasing fiber, and then we fill out the rest of the diet with healthy proteins. We know that plant-based protein sources are a really healthy source for hormone production. In fact, a study looking at women who ovulated or didn't ovulated showed that for every serving of plant-based protein over animal-based protein, women had a higher tendency towards regular ovulation. And I think that's really important, right? So when we hear people talking about protein, and there's this very American sense that protein is just meat and animal meat.
Right.
But we know that you can get a protein in a lot of different ways that are really important for you. Legumes and a lot of
Plant-based as well,
Plant-based.
that have those micronutrients and fiber.
Exactly. And so I always really encourage my patients, and I try to make it really easy for them and say, hey, if we look at your week, let's start by decreasing the amount of animal meat you might eat. And it's not that you can't have any, but if we decrease that down, and let's say you're only eating meat one time per day, suddenly you're filling in those other meals with what? More vegetable-based protein, more fruits and vegetables. And you're starting to look at your meals and how you structure your day in a way that's going to be more anti-inflammatory and help with hormonal health.
So as an athlete, I feel like protein is just like strictly enforced, which is obviously so important when it comes to building lean muscle mass. And so for me, it's like, okay, protein is a priority over specifically the last year and a half. Getting those micronutrients, making sure I'm getting enough like fats and carbs too has been so important. So a little background on me, I lost my period for 13 months after I trained for my marathon a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and you're training for an Ironman now, right?
For an Ironman now, but my outlook on training and fueling is a 180. I have never eaten more in my life than I am right now. The amount of like power output I have from it is insane. So really focusing on that. But yeah, so I lost my period when I was training for my marathon. It was obviously a stressful time in my life, going through a divorce as well. So cortisol is obviously high too. So I was underfueling, I think, as well, just like protein, right? But like my glycogen stores, I do not think were where they needed to be. I was not probably eating enough micronutrients. So there was a lot of things involved that was like the perfect equation to lose my cycle. And it took 13 months to get it back.
That's actually on the fast side. You know, after,
wow, really?
Yeah, so this is hypothalamic amenorrhea. This means that your brain has shut off the signals FSH and LH, which is what tells the ovary to grow an egg or to make hormones.
Okay.
When you have hypothalamic amenorrhea, it can be from stress, from low energy, not eating enough, over exercising, also kind of thought of as the female athlete triad. When the brain shuts off like that, it takes a substantial kind of healing process to get it turned back on, meaning you have to then have appropriate nutrition and nutrients for a significant amount of time. The fact that you actually got yours back in 13 months is quite impressive because for patients, most of my patients take them years.
Yeah, I spoke with a lot of women in my DMs that were like, it's been 3 to 5 years and they still don't have theirs back. So I am thankful in that sense. But it took like a lot of discipline and just like consistency with stepping back a little bit with my training, eating more, adding more nutrients in.
And it's not just eating more, it's really the quality of those nutrients completely.
For sure.
And I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize, again, because protein is, yes, important, but when we think about hormones, what's the building block of a hormone? It's cholesterol. So fat is, equally / more important. But what we see is people still have this tendency to try to avoid or, have low fat options, right? You have dairy. How many people still choose, low fat milk, low fat yogurt, skim this? I would say those healthy fats are really important in your hormone production. And so when we are constantly, lowering the amount of healthy fat that we're intaking, we're not putting ourselves in a place where our body has the building blocks to make the hormones that it needs.
That's such a good point. I also see too with like a lot of my clients and just my community that a lot of women tend to underfuel, not knowing. They're moms on the go, they're snacking, maybe they're not like really tracking what they're eating.
Yeah.
And so that combined with all the activity, they're underfueling, wondering why maybe they're not losing weight, wondering why they're maybe not building muscle, getting stronger. And in all of it, their hormone health is probably not in the most optimal state. So what would your advice be to these women that maybe aren't getting the results they want, not feeling their best, or hormones are out of whack?
Sam, I think you hit on it. First thing is to know what you're putting in your body. So I always think that there's a helpful reason to track. So whether it's a dietary or MyFitnessPal or whatever type of tracker you may want, actually write down, what you're eating. I like a lot of apps that will help break it down into your different grouping of macronutrients so that you can see, wow, I had coffee and I didn't eat anything else until noon. And then I had a quick salad. And then, I ate this protein bar that's really processed on the go. And then I nibbled on the kids' snacks. And I think to your point, yes, so many women underfuel. This one causes inflammation. The brain is not happy if you're not fueling appropriately. Your cortisol levels are going to rise. You're stressed. This is going to deposit more abdominal fat. This is going to increase insulin resistance. So the whole thought of I'm eating less calories, so I should be losing weight, you're actually really stressing your body. And those stress hormones are causing you to reserve energy and put on fat so that you can stay alive. The body has a very distinct function to help you survive. And if we think about these high stress or low caloric impact times we might have had in our past, a famine or a war, right, where you couldn't get the nutrients you needed, your body has certain mechanisms in this chronic stress environment to make sure you have those fuel stores if needed. So what we're really doing is working against ourselves. And if we want to reverse that, we have to start reversing back this chronic stress and chronic inflammation process. And this starts by eating more but high quality foods. Also, getting more sleep. That's probably one of the top things I see.
Sleep is a number one. It's like, I feel like it should be a no-brainer, but so many of us struggle with sleep.
It's the hardest thing.
It is.
Especially, I think, time of life, a lot of people are either building their career and they're hustling really hard, or they have little kids. And of course, sleep becomes not your own anymore. But when we don't prioritize our own sleep, we are starting the day in a deficit. That's when your body heals itself from inflammation. It's where your cortisol gets balanced out by melatonin. So if you're not sleeping enough, you are going to start yourself out on a day where you're already more stressed. Your body's not going to be able to interpret your hormones as well. And we know that sleep deficits when it comes to hormone production, ovulation, trying to get pregnant, and even IVF outcomes are worse if you're not sleeping enough. So the number one thing you can do doesn't cost any money and isn't a huge lifestyle switch, right? It's just actually setting a sleep routine and time that you need so that you can get more sleep.
What would you suggest for women, the amount of hours of like optimal sleep?
8 hours is really optimal. The range is going to be 7 to 9.
Okay.
What we see though is, more than a third of people get 6 hours or less.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like that 7 to 8. If I get more or less, I'm tired. Depending on if I go up or down.
I was going to say, 7.5 to 8 is probably the ideal amount if you can have it.
But like good quality sleep.
But good quality sleep. And a lot of women too, and I've been guilty about this in my past, you get in bed and what do?
Scroll the phone.
You scroll your phone.
Yeah.
Right. You scroll your phone, or you're planning your day for tomorrow, or you're answering emails or messages.
You're still thinking
You're
and
still
doing.
thinking and doing, and you're not having a healthy sleep routine when it comes to, setting the lights lower, put your phone away, get a sleep mask, get a sound machine. And I think what's also really important is our partners, right? If they're in bed watching TV, if they are out doing other things, it really has to be a joint effort because sleep is just as important for testosterone production as well. But we see often a woman will try, I'm going to make this change. I want better hormones, try to go to sleep, but their partner's not ready yet. And they're up and they're doing things. Then they come to bed later. They disrupt their sleep pattern.
Right.
So we really have to think about how do we, as a unit, if we have a partner, get more sleep together.
That's such a good point. And honestly, one that I have not thought of. My boyfriend right now, we are very much so on the same page when it comes to health and prioritizing sleep. So we get in the bed together, turn the lights off, and that's it. But how would you go about, like, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, okay, my partner is not on the same page. Like, how do you fix that?
I think it's honest discussion. And that's, really the basis of any relationship.
Sure.
But it seems silly in a way because it seems so simple, like sleep. Oh, we should have to get on the same page. But what we know is circadian rhythm is part of this importance too. Going to bed at the same time and getting up at the same time. So if you are in a committed relationship where you and your partner share a bed, you need to say, hey, what is going to be we're a unit, sleep schedule? When can we go to bed and get up based on what we do for a living, our lifestyles, when we like to go to bed, what's going on at this stage in our life, and make a commitment to each other to say, if we don't start the day well, none of those other goals that we have, whether it is to be in good shape, to have great energy, to be able to play with our kids or achieve our top concentration at work. None of those things are going to fall in line as easy if we are not starting the day out rested. So how are we as a unit going to do that together?
It's so true. The last couple of years of my life has been like go, 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 like nonstop. I was in the pharmaceutical career for like 10 plus years, switched to what I'm doing now, and it's just been nonstop. But with that has come the challenge of sleep. And that was like one of my New Year's resolutions was this year to really prioritize sleep. Like literally on my vision board, it was like sleep.
Good for you.
But I honestly feel so much better prioritizing that sleep. It's hard because like there's always something to do, right? With my job, I feel like you could probably understand too. Like there's always something, but you have to shut it down. I'm sure some of the listeners who are listening to this feel the same way, but it's like prioritizing the sleep. You're going to perform so much better.
So much better.
Internally and externally.
It's funny now, I don't drink anymore, but if I don't get enough sleep, I almost feel hungover.
Right.
Exactly.
Same.
Your body needs sleep to that degree. And I'll also say there's this love-hate relationship with melatonin. I'm a big fan of it. It's an antioxidant.
Okay.
It can be really important for brain health, but we see a lot of supplement in the industry out there promoting these extra high doses that actually can cause more harm than good.
Is that why people might feel groggy?
Exactly. They feel too groggy.
Anytime I've taken melatonin, I'm like a different human being and not awake.
Yes. If you're going to take melatonin, which not everybody needs it, but if you want to try it, I recommend you take no more than 3 milligrams a night.
Okay.
1 milligram is probably a better dose, and you're only going to find that in pediatric versions, right? Most adult versions are going to have 10 milligrams or more.
It's so much higher.
It's crazy.
Okay.
But so no more than 3 milligrams at the actual most, and you should take it 30 minutes before you want to go to sleep. So you should take it and then start that sleep routine. If you miss kind of the window when it's starting to rise, it's going to then keep you up even longer. Your body's going to overcompensate because you're not yet going to bed. But if you can take it, it can be a helpful additive, especially if you're trying to change your sleep pattern.
Or like even when I travel, I feel like I can never sleep sound.
You're
so that
changing
might be
time zones
right.
or a hotel. It's just not conducive.
Okay, I'll have to try that.
I also think a sound machine, even if it's just an app on your phone, can be really helpful, and a sleep mask. I'm a huge fan.
Sleep mask.
I love my sleep mask. I feel like such an old lady, but
me
I
too.
love
It makes such a difference. And same with I have like the white so the app I have on my phone, it's like white noise, pink noise, but brown noise. That's
brown
the
is your
one
favorite.
I like.
I'm a pink noise kind of
noise.
girl.
Okay.
But I think just find a noise,
Right,
something that's just, it's calming, soothing to you, and can kind of get some of those extraneous sounds out that your brain may click on to and take you down a different pathway.
I love that. Okay, so sleep is important. So really quick, to wrap up with the nutrition when it comes to just like the average woman wanting to protect their hormone health and keep it in its best shape, would you suggest like just daily must have supplements to help optimize?
For the regular person, and obviously it's going to vary stage of life, medical conditions, but I think that everybody is going to need, what we usually say, if you're trying to get pregnant, we want you to have folic acid, right? So we'll just put that on there. If you could get pregnant or you're trying to get pregnant, we want to make sure you have some folic acid. For the general public, vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, and magnesium are my must supplements.
Love that.
And this is just going to kind of set the base. Now, of course, there is a lot of benefit from supplements in certain medical conditions. So if you have PCOS, which obviously can impact, your insulin regulation in addition to your ovulation.
Which I want to talk about that like next. So we'll come right back.
So we'll come right back to it. But like inositol can be really helpful in that circumstance. And if you have endometriosis, which is inflammatory, things like vitamin C and vitamin E can be of extra benefit. So I do think there is something to be said for targeting supplements to both your own nutritional intake and to your disease state. But for the average person, it's unrealistic for most people that we're going to get every nutrient we need from our diet, even though in a perfect world, you and I would love it if everybody could do that.
Do you recommend women to get blood work done to kind of see where they might be deficient, especially if they're trying or wanting to try sooner than later?
Absolutely, especially when it comes to vitamin D. Vitamin D for sure has been correlated with poor pregnancy outcomes and a harder time getting pregnant, and so many people are deficient in it. Vitamin D supplements, if you go look at them over the counter, you're going to see ranges from 800 international units to 10,000, right? Like, how do you know what to take? So I think that one can be really helpful to see what you're deficient in and then to target that.
Okay, ladies, you know that hormones and hormone changes can be wild, whether it's postpartum, going through a stressful season, or just navigating the natural shifts that happen as we move through those different stages of life. Energy can dip, sleep gets thrown off, clothes can feel tighter due to ongoing stress and high cortisol, mood shifts. Listen, I have been there. You've been eating clean, working out consistently, doing all the right things you know you should do, and still feel like you're not at home in your body. That's exactly where Joy and Blokes came in for me. Guys, I was in the thick of it. After a year of not having my period, I got my period back, and thanks to Joy and Blokes, it gave me real validation that my body was healing and finally getting the support it needed. It all starts with lab work. I chose the comprehensive panel because I love having as much data as possible. And once your results come in, you meet with your provider to go over everything together. I love my clinician. She's kind, knowledgeable, and actually listens. No rushed appointments, no being dismissed. From there, you decide what the next best step is. Maybe it's one simple lifestyle shift, or maybe it's building a smart supplement pack based on exactly what your blood work shows you're missing. Either way, they meet you where you are, and the care is completely personalized. And the convenience, they've literally thought of everything, including the option to have someone come to your home to do your blood draw. That alone makes such a difference if you're juggling a million things like me. Once your plan is in place, everything is seamless. You're not hopping from site to site trying to figure out what supplements you need. Your custom smart supplement pack is built for you, delivered to your door, and your provider is just an email away if anything needs tweaking. If you haven't listened to my episode with Katie, one of the founders, give it a listen. It's one of the most downloaded episodes for a reason, because so many of us are craving that feeling of being in sync with our bodies again. And right now you can save 50% off all lab work and supplements with the code SAMCFITPOD. SAMCFITPOD. Just head to joyandblokes.com to get started. Test, don't guess. When your body's supported from the inside out, everything else starts to click, and you deserve to feel like yourself again. This episode is sponsored by my absolute skincare obsession right now, ClearStem. If you have not listened to my episode with the founders, Danielle and Kaylee, you guys have to go back and listen. It was honestly one of the most refreshing chats I've ever had about skin, hormones, and why so many of us feel stuck in the cycle of breakouts and aging at the same time. And I'll be real, ClearStem has completely replaced my old routine. The Hydroglow moisturizer makes my skin look so dewy and healthy, like I've actually been sleeping 8 hours, which I'll be honest is not every night because Quinn has been waking up in the middle of the night, so it's definitely helpful. And the Bounce Back Serum, it's basically like Botox in a bottle without the needles, of course. It's shimmery and feels like a treat every single night. What I love most is that ClearStem is the first skincare line that's both clean and clinical. No pore clogging junk and no harsh chemicals wrecking your skin barrier. Most acne products are too damaging and most anti-aging ones clog your pores. ClearStem solves both by targeting the real root causes of acne and aging. And the best part, it was created by two women who have been exactly where we have been, dealing with years of acne, feeling frustrated with the only options being Accutane or birth control. Danielle and Kaylee built ClearStem to finally give us products that actually work with our bodies, not against them. Because when your skin feels good, everything else just feels easier. You all can try ClearStem and see the difference for yourself at clearstem.com/CMCFit and use my code SAMCFit for 15% off your order. That's CLEARSTEM.com/CMCFit with code SAMCFit for 15% off. All right, let's dig into PCOS and endometriosis, because I feel like on social media too, like you see so much about it, and it really can vary person to person what those symptoms look like, right? So can you kind of start with PCOS, give us an idea of like what that is and what to look out for as far as symptoms?
Okay, let's back it up one, because to understand PCOS, we have to understand what should be happening normally, since this is a disruption of that. And it'll very quickly what happens normally.
Love it.
I like to think about every month you have a group of eggs available. Each egg grows inside a follicle. So if we imagine inside the ovary that there's a vault where all your eggs are kept, and you're born with all your eggs and you run out of them over time, each month a group of these eggs come out of the vault. When it comes to normal, the brain sends out a hormone called FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, well-named hormone, to get a follicle or an egg to grow. As that egg grows, it makes estrogen, which talks back to the brain to say, hey, I'm growing now. When estrogen levels are high enough, the brain sends out a signal of LH, which is luteinizing hormone, allowing the follicle to rupture, the egg to be released, and that's ovulation. And then after that, the follicle heals back up, becomes a cyst known as the corpus luteum. And now this is the second half of the cycle, or the luteal phase, where the corpus luteum is making progesterone based on LH from the brain. So the first half of the cycle is the follicular phase, second half the luteal phase. That corpus luteum can only live about 2 weeks. So if you're not pregnant, it will die. Progesterone levels will drop. You'll get a period. Another group of follicles come out of that vault, and the process starts over again. So when we start to see disruption, whether it's from the brain level or the ovarian level, we can see changes in our menstrual cycle as that first vital sign. PCOS, in its simplest, I like to say, is a miscommunication between the brain and the ovary, because the ovary has more eggs than it should inside that vault. So one thing that's really fascinating is when you have more eggs remaining, or more eggs in the vault, more come out every month. And as the vault starts to get emptier, you have fewer eggs coming out every month. And we'll circle back to this later in the discussion. But what this means is that if you have PCOS and you're born with a higher than normal egg count, probably because we lose about half our eggs when we're a baby inside our mother. So probably something that happened during her pregnancy actually caused you to be born with more eggs. Your body compensates by sending more eggs out of the vault every month, and your brain doesn't know this. So your brain sends out the normal amount of FSH. So let's just think numbers. If normal is 20 eggs outside the vault, but you have 40, that same amount of FSH is now diluted in half to every egg. So one egg doesn't get a strong enough signal to reliably grow and ovulate. And what we start to see is you get stuck in this prolonged follicular phase where your body's not making quite enough estrogen and you're not ovulating.
You're never ovulating.
So you're never ovulating reliably or predictably. Every month, so if you don't ovulate though, those eggs don't just sit there, they'll die. And the next month you have another group come out of the vault. So that next month, maybe it's a little bit of a lower number and you'll ovulate this month. The other thing that can sometimes happen is when those eggs sit there longer, the brain is still sending out some FSH, trying to ask one of them to grow, and you might get a delayed ovulation.
So that was me.
You had that delayed.
Well, I was never like diagnosed with PCOS, but like I saw a fertility doctor that did the whole scan and everything. I ovulated like day 27.
Yeah.
So that's why I could never get pregnant, because it was like my period would come through and basically wash it all out or something. Or
yeah, well, what happens is when you are ovulating late, okay, so you have this late ovulation. It takes a long time to get a stronger signal of FSH to get that egg to grow. Then it's going to grow and ovulate, which makes it harder to detect, but also that lining's been sitting in your body a little bit longer.
Right.
You've had more low estrogen days, which is a little more of an inflammatory time, since estrogen is anti-inflammatory. And really what starts to happen is the ovary loves to make hormones. And if it's not chugging out these high levels of estrogen or progesterone, the pathway to make testosterone starts to become very easy. And what we see is the ovary starts favoring the production of testosterone, which increases acne. It can cause hair thinning of the head, also hair growth on the face. It also can cause central weight gain, kind of that male weight. If we think of men having a beer belly and women having that hips and thighs weight. So even in very thin or lean women, they would start to get this abdominal weight, which then, as we talked about earlier, is inflammatory itself and can cause insulin resistance even if you are thin. So you see these metabolic changes, which become a huge problem with PCOS. So not just the I'm not ovulating, but then the downstream impact of this can be highly problematic. And we see that PCOS, it was really hard to diagnose because, well, it shouldn't be hard to diagnose. The diagnosis comes from having 2 out of 3, a high follicle count on ultrasound, any androgen signs, whether it's acne or high levels in your blood work, and irregular or absent periods. So if you have acne and irregular cycles, you got it.
Check. Yeah.
We see a generation of women who maybe went in when they were younger to the doctor, had some irregular cycles, and they were given a birth control prescription. I'm not saying the birth control was wrong, but what I think was wrong was not getting to the bottom of what was going on, or at least not educating women, saying, hey, I think you have PCOS because of this or that. We're going to put you on birth control to lower some of your testosterone levels and help regulate your cycle right now. But when you stop the pill, these things are going to come back and we need to address them before you want to get pregnant. So we have a generation of women who were put on the pill, who weren't diagnosed, who then stop the pill and have all these problems. And there's a lot of blaming the birth control pill for causing these symptoms, but the real root cause is just the PCOS itself, which PCOS is so tough because you do have this innate problem that you can't always reverse. I tell patients, you may have the perfect lifestyle, but if your body, your brain and ovaries aren't communicating, it's just an endocrine disease, just like so many others. We don't put self-blame on people who have thyroid disease, yet there's a lot of self-blame on women who have PCOS that they're doing something wrong or causing their PCOS.
Right. And I've seen that a lot too on social media. And like my heart goes out to these women. And I would love to ask you, you kind of touched on it, but is there a way to reverse it naturally through diet and lifestyle? If so, what can you do? And if not, like what are the next steps?
So I tell every patient with PCOS, there's no cure for PCOS. Okay. Your body is made this way. You have a high egg count. This is a syndrome, meaning a constellation of symptoms that we're going to work our hardest to put you in the best state. And maybe some of the symptoms will go away and maybe they won't. You owe it to yourself to do everything you can though, because if you can get back to an ovulatory pattern, you're going to feel better. And if you can get closer to that, at least you'll have an easier time responding to treatments, especially if you're trying to get pregnant. I will say this before I dive into my recommendations. Everybody, as we get older, start to have a decrease in our egg count. The vault starts to get lower and fewer eggs will come out, meaning even women who have PCOS as they age will start to see a change in their cycle pattern and their PCOS symptoms. Often this is past their reproductive years, but it causes a lot of social media. Oh, I cured my PCOS and now I don't have these problems, when really natural age-related changes are going to do this for everybody. We do not see that women with PCOS go into menopause later. And the reason why is because they're just losing more eggs per month and it neutralizes out at some place. So I think that's important to know when you see these claims that I cured my PCOS or follow my 10-step plan to curing yours.
I see that
all the time. That said, because part of the problem with PCOS is this metabolic change and the impact that it has on how you process sugar and insulin resistance and cortisol, there are things that you can do that can help your symptoms or make you have a better chance of responding. And this is really focusing on those anti-inflammatory changes. So PCOS, for sure, we see that eating high levels of fruits and vegetables, eating full-fat dairy, not low-fat dairy, okay? Eating plant-based protein over the animal-based protein. So I think that's that really healthy-based diet pattern that we're talking about earlier. It's not a restrictive eating. It is trying to fuel your body with a lot of fiber and a lot of antioxidants so that it has
micronutrients.
Exactly what it needs. We also know that, getting more sleep, trying to lower stress levels, exercising in a way that can be really helpful for your hormones and not harmful. And for PCOS, this may differ based on your life stage or your body habitus, because we see that women with PCOS, they can be overweight because of part of the syndrome. If you're having high testosterone levels and you're placing abdominal fat, you might be more overweight. Yet we see women who have PCOS who are not overweight, who are lean. So it can impact women in a variety of body stages. And I always say my recommendations for you for exercise are going to vary based on what your goals are or your stage of life. But in general, building muscle, skeletal muscle, is going to help clear inflammation and help fight insulin resistance. And that goes against what most women who perhaps maybe, if you're overweight and you have PCOS, you've been drilled in your head that you need to lose weight by doing what? Cardio.
Exactly. High intensity workouts.
High intensity cardio. That's what you need to do.
Sweat, get your heart rate up, all the things.
That's the only thing that's going to melt your fat off. And that's what you need to focus on. So I see these women who've been killing themselves doing that, focusing on the cardio, the high intensity work, and they're really not seeing any hormone pattern change. But if we shift that and say, let's really focus on building muscle as the base of why we exercise. That's probably the number one thing from an exercise standpoint for our hormonal health is more skeletal muscle. So that's going to be strength training and resistance training as the core of your workout plan. Not only is that better for your hormone health, better for your PCOS, it's also more attainable because you know this too. We see women commit to some cardio plan and drop off of it so fast because you get injured really quickly, right? Or it's just very hard sometimes to get up in the morning and say, I'm going to do this HIIT workout. It's a lot easier to say, I'm going to lift some weights. I'm going to do 20 minutes of strength training and really set myself up in a progressive plan where I don't get injured, I don't get burnt out on it. And I think that shift I haven't seen happen quite yet when it comes to especially PCOS patients.
Yeah, I hope so. Because I've seen, I obviously don't have PCOS that I know of, but I've seen what that plan, how that's changed my own life, my own ways, especially with hormonal health and getting my period back.
58% of runners will actually have cycle changes if we think about that, right? So when we think about high intensity work or vigorous activity, even though, and I tell patients this, you're going to have periods of your life. I have a patient right now who just froze her eggs and now she's training for a marathon. Okay. I'm going to do a second round when she's done. And I say, we have to accept that if we're going to have a life goal, which running a marathon is an amazing one, you've got to set your stage to fuel yourself appropriately. Absolutely. And make sure that you're taking a proper recovery for yourself. And a lot of that includes sleep and lower intensity days, meaning building muscle too, right? You're not just going to pound miles on the pavement every day. You've got to keep that skeletal muscle health.
Well, this makes me feel so much better too, just like having you say this, because obviously training for a marathon, I'm going to be conditioned. I've always wanted to do, it's in a half Ironman, so not a full, but still
girl,
a little intense.
Take the credit.
So training for that too. I have my own coach for my program. It's actually my partner, my boyfriend. He's a coach as well. So he's programming most of my actual Ironman training. And then I have a macro coach who works with CrossFit athletes. So he knows how to help give you the guidance and program to fuel. Just because I'm trying to do everything that I can to make sure that I am set up for success to not lose my period again. Is that a bad thing to expect any kind of cycle changes? Like, is there a perfect world where your period stays the same through training like that?
There is a perfect world, right? 58% is not everybody.
Sure.
But I also think there is something to be said for if you do not, which you probably do, but if you do not track your cycle, this is a great place where tracking your cycle can be really advantageous because we see a very specific change in your cycle pattern. And I always say this is the different stages of what we call ovulatory dysfunction. If losing your period is all the way at one end and perfectly regular cycles is at the other, the first change you see is a short luteal phase, meaning you're ovulating and now suddenly the time period from ovulation till your next cycle starting is going to be less than 11 days. We really want to see it be more than that.
Okay.
So if that starts saying, okay, let's say you're tracking it right now, it's 12 days. And then suddenly you start seeing it drop and now it's 10 days or 9 days. That's your red flag warning sign that your body's not getting what it wants. So change something. After that, you're going to start to ovulate later. So what you described before where you were having the ovulation day 20 something, right? You're not going to be ovulating quite as early as you were. And so your periods are going to space out. Then they'll get irregular and then they'll go away. Okay. But if you're tracking your cycle while you are training, then I think you can really fine tune this and do some personalized targeting. So you say, okay, gosh, my luteal phase is getting short.
That's so helpful.
This is a sign that I'm not fueling appropriately or getting enough rest or recovery. And I need to change something that I'm doing to try to lengthen this back out. So if you pay attention to that metric, because your period is a vital sign, if we learn how to listen to it, then you're able to not get maybe as far gone as you had last time when you trained for a marathon.
Right. Okay. That's so helpful. And I am doing all the tracking, like writing down my cycle days when I'm ovulating. I'm doing like the testing. I'm also pretty in tune with my body. Like I know, is this weird? Like I can feel like my egg drop.
That's actually called middle schmerz. Do you know this?
No.
Okay. So
please tell me.
Okay. So women who feel their ovulatory pain, remember we said earlier, what happens when you ovulate? That follicle, which is a cyst, is fluid filled with a microscopic egg inside. It's going to rupture and the egg is going to be released. And so you can feel that cyst bursting or that follicle rupturing. That's a German word called Mittelschmerz pain, which means middle of the cycle.
Okay.
And so it's actually a good number of women can actually feel it. And when you are, that's the highest sensitive sign that you're actually ovulating.
Wild.
So if you feel your ovulatory pain, you feel your Mittelschmerz, you can then say, okay, that's ovulation. The next day is the start of the luteal phase. Count those days out until the day before your period starts and be tracking how long that phase is specifically.
That's so helpful. Wild also that is an actual term.
Yes.
But yeah, I can feel it and I can always feel it coming on too. Cause like a couple days prior, I'm like more hot than normal. Like my temperature goes up.
Yep. You feel
which is actually
changes
right now. Like I think I'm about to ovulate. Like today or tomorrow, no joke.
Well, it's also like 100 degrees here, so there's that.
Very interesting. Okay, I wanted to switch gears to fertility because a lot of my listeners are ages 25 to 45, different seasons of life, but a lot of these women either want to have kids, already have kids, or they're trying to get pregnant. So I would love to ask you, because I feel like being on social media the past several years, you see more women talking about their fertility journeys, how hard it is to get pregnant, miscarriages, and it's heartbreaking. It seems so much more prevalent than it was years ago. Do you think that's because more women are talking about it, or fertility is just a harder thing these days?
Both are true. So we definitely see more women talking about it. I joined social media like in 2016. And that were the days if somebody was talking about their fertility, it was a faceless account. You didn't really know who they were. They didn't use their name. And now we see people share on their real accounts, their real stories. It's so impactful and empowering and really helps break down barriers and stigma. And I'm a huge fan of sharing the reality. However, in the same breath, fertility rates are increasing. We would say 10 years ago that 1 out of 8 couples would have infertility, and now it's 1 out of 6. And if you're trying for the first time in the US, it's 1 out of 5. So we know that fertility rates are rising. In the same breath, we know that women are having higher rates of what we call low ovarian reserve, meaning women are running out of eggs earlier, and men's sperm counts are half of what they were 50 years ago. So we see this flux where it's not just, oh, more people are talking about it, or, oh, more people are waiting longer, which both those things can be true. But we really see, and in my opinion, it's the lifestyle that we lead right now that is contributing to this increase in inflammation and this increase in fertility and difficulty that we're seeing across the board.
Do you think there's a number one culprit to this?
I think it's the combination of what we eat, the environment that we're exposed to, and this hustle culture that so many people have in this age range. We're not sleeping enough. Stress, chronic stress is so prevalent. We don't even think about it. I almost have patients laugh sometimes when I say, let's talk about strategies to reduce your stress, because it seems like this non-modifiable factor. But the truth is, it is modifiable. And we know that chronic stress is wired to shut off your brain. Your brain is meant to say, oh gosh, your cortisol is constantly high. This must be a really bad time in your life. We're going to shut things down. And that's not at all what we want to happen if we're trying to get pregnant. The other thing that I see is I'm starting to see this increased awareness from women, but their partners, if they have a partner, are completely living a different life, right? So women are trying to eat everything right, and they're tracking their cycles, and their partner is really not paying attention to things. And really, we have to acknowledge that 50% of infertility is male factor and 50% is female.
Right, because that's always the question. One of my best friends, she now has her second baby, but the road to get there was very long, like several miscarriages. And she was trying to do all the right things when it came to diet and lifestyle, did IVF, failed attempts. And then I feel like you hear of this a lot, but like people do IVF, they give up, they stop, and then they naturally get pregnant. Do you think that has something to do with just like stress levels going down, your body like at a break?
I think it comes to two things. One, I definitely think there is something to be said for stress levels going down, or for feeling like you've changed mindset, because when you're struggling to achieve a goal, it becomes inherently so stressful. The other thing is we tend to make changes as we go through something as expensive or as big or overwhelming as IVF. We start to make more lifestyle changes, but those things can take time to impact. So we'll use male changes, for example. It takes 3 to 6 months to see the full impact. If your male partner starts eating better and stops smoking and stops marijuana, it's going to take time for that to show in their sperm and the quality of sperm. So I'll often see somebody make those changes at the start of IVF. It's not enough time to really see that impact in the IVF cycle. But maybe they're taking a break, they're going to save up money and do IVF again, and 6 months later they get pregnant. So sometimes it is both, we've made some positive changes along the way, but we didn't have the time to see them. And that's really speaking to the fact that if you want to be pregnant, I hear this online all the time. So-and-so got pregnant and they smoked pot, and so-and-so ate terribly. And you're saying all these things that don't matter. And of course, people get pregnant. But if you are struggling with infertility, or you're having a hard time getting pregnant, if you know that kids are a life goal and you're waiting longer, or if you have any known issue, maybe you in your past got diagnosed with PCOS or endometriosis or a low egg count, trying to proactively do what you can for both you and your partner, if you have a partner, is going to be so important. And that's why setting that foundation for good hormonal health so that you have the best, not just hormone system, making good estrogen, making good progesterone, making good testosterone, but so you have the best egg and sperm quality that you can, because that quality is really, if we think about what's the role of an egg and a sperm, it's to protect the DNA. It protects DNA. And when it's exposed to this chronic inflammation of the, not sleeping, the late nights, the stress, the food, the processed stuff, the drinking, the marijuana, that inflammation, what does it do? It's going to damage the DNA inside the egg and the sperm. And when it comes to eggs, we always talk about age-related changes because that is so important. As we get older, we have a decrease in our egg number and we have a decrease in our egg count. Or we have a decrease in our egg count and we have a decrease in our egg quality. Quality, though, I always say that's your DNA. Those are your chromosomes standing in line. My really bad analogy that I like to use for this is imagine your chromosomes are a line of kindergartners. You're born and they are in perfect order. Mm-hmm. And the longer that you wait to get pregnant, the more likelihood somebody's going to get out of order. Inflammation is like having puppies and candy around the room, right? Those kindergartners are just drawn to it and they're going to get out of line even faster. So that egg quality is really tied to both your age, because time matters, but the metabolic function, the ability of the egg to also divide, and the mitochondrial health, that is so tightly correlated with inflammatory levels. And so being a healthy self earlier, before you try to get pregnant, is also really important. And that's something we don't talk about enough, right? We do a complete 180 from I'm preventing pregnancy, la, la, la. And then suddenly I want to get pregnant. Now what? And that's when we really start thinking about our fertility. Absolutely. And if we step back and say, fertility is a marker of our hormonal health, it's a health marker itself. It is something that I should prioritize because having kids is a life goal. Earlier in your life, we should really be thinking about some of these anti-inflammatory practices and how you structure your life, or at a minimum before you're wanting to get pregnant, not the day you decide to stop your pill, but months before that.
That's so good. Okay, back to the egg quantity and egg quality. Mm-hmm. So both are important, right?
Correct.
Through diet and lifestyle changes to help with that egg quality, can you increase the quantity?
Yes and no. The short answer is no, right? The scientific answer is you're born with all the eggs you're ever going to have. They are in a vault inside your ovary. You are running out of eggs over time, and one day you'll be out of eggs. Although I like to say nothing's quite as black and white as that. And if we imagine there's a vault keeper, somebody who's controlling how many eggs are being released from that vault, we do know there are certain circumstances where you might not have as many eggs released. And a lot of that comes from certain times of stress.
Inflammation, like you said.
Exactly. And so if we are trying to go through IVF and optimize things, it's subtle nuances. It's not going to be the difference in 40 and 10. But when you're trying to go through cycles, trying to have as many eggs as you can within that range available to you, because IVF or egg freezing in its simplest nutshell, right? It's the only thing I have that's going to improve your chances of getting pregnant over your natural rates. And what I'm trying to do is get 1 month's group of eggs all to grow. So if you only have 5 eggs, that's all I can get. If you have 20 eggs, I can get 20. If you have 40 eggs, maybe I can get 40. So people have very different outcomes based on their own unique potential, based on what we call ovarian reserve, or how many eggs you have available. And that's kind of rooted in that idea of more eggs in the vault, more come out, more are available to you. But if you are saying, I really want to have as many eggs as possible, you want to make sure you're really decreasing inflammation so there's nothing preventing you from having as many as you can at that exact moment.
Okay, ladies, can we talk about the water in our showers for a second? If you live in a hard water area like me, you know the struggle, dry skin, random breakouts, or hair that just looks flat and brassy no matter how much money you spend on products. Well, that was me until I found the VitaClean shower filter. We spend so much time investing in clean skincare, eating well, and trying to take care of our bodies, but have you ever thought about the water you're actually showering in? Well, I had not either, and once I did, I could not unthink it. VitaClean shower filter is a vitamin C infused triple filtered shower head that removes chlorine and all the junk that messes with our skin and hair. And the difference? Immediate. My skin feels softer, my hair is shinier, and honestly, it just makes showering feel like this little spa moment in the middle of mom life, which I will take. And I'm also obsessed with the lavender shot scent right now. It's so relaxing. And bonus for my fellow busy moms, the handheld option is a lifesaver. After a sweaty workout or just chasing the kids around outside, I can rinse off without fully washing my hair. Oh, and installation, less than a minute, so easy, truly mom-proof. If you're already putting effort into your health and self-care, this is the easiest upgrade ever. Trust me, after your first shower, you'll feel the difference. Head to vitaclean.co and use code SAMCFIT for 20% off their starter kits. That's vitaclean.co, code SAMCFIT for 20% off. This episode is brought to you by Caraway Home, and if you've been on the fence about upgrading your cookware, this is your sign. So let's talk about why I made the switch. Years ago, Caraway's founder, Jordan, accidentally overheated a traditional nonstick pan and ended up with something called Teflon flu. He later learned that it just takes 2.5 minutes for those pans to hit 500 degrees and start releasing toxic chemicals into the air. That's what pushed him to create Caraway, a line of cookware and kitchen essentials that are 100% non-toxic and actually safe for your family. And let me tell you, you guys, it has completely changed the way I feel about cooking for my household. I love knowing I can throw together a quick one-pan dinner without worrying about what's leaching into our food. My current obsession, their prep and board set. It comes with knives, shears, utensils, cutting boards, and organizers. And if you know me, I love organization, and it makes meal prep feel so much smoother. Plus, it saves you over $200 compared to buying everything separately. And don't even get me started on their glass food containers. They keep leftovers fresh forever and look so sleek in my fridge. But the scary truth is the average adult consumes over 150,000 plastic particles a year, and more than 70% of cookware on the market is still coated in PTFE. So switching to Caraway just gives me so much peace of mind. So if you're ready to clean up your kitchen, now is the perfect time. Caraway's cookware set is kind of internet famous for a reason, and right now you can save up to $190 when you buy the full set. Plus, for my listeners, you'll get an extra 10% off when you go to carawayhome.com/CMCFit or use code SAMCFit at checkout. That's carawayhome.com/CMCFit or code SAMCFit for 10% off. Caraway, non-toxic cookware made modern.
So I just turned 35.
Okay.
I guess I'm considered geriatric now, huh?
Geriatric friend. It's the worst, stupidest name we could think of.
Oh my goodness. I'm like, way to make me feel old, guys. I have 2 boys. We were talking about our kiddos earlier, but 5 and 3. And my road to get pregnant with my first, it just took a few months. And then with my second, it took like about 10 months. That's when I noticed like I ovulated later. I had to go on progesterone, like from the start of a, I'm pregnant sign on the test. And I also have MTHFR gene deficiency. I don't know if you're like.
Oh, I talk about it all the time.
Okay. Yeah. I want to touch on that too, because I'm like homozygous, and I don't know if there's insight you can provide on that. I'm sure there's tons. But for me, I didn't think that I would want to have more kids, but found the love of my life. And we want to expand our family in the next 1.5 to 2 years. And so reason why I'm doing my Ironman, kind of checking some goals off the list before I start that new chapter of my life. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, that's why I'm being so diligent and strategic about fueling myself to maintain where I'm at with my hormone health. So what would your advice be for me specifically, and other women that maybe are listening to this that want to start trying in the next year, like that are active, live a busy lifestyle? How can I make sure that I'm ready to try and conceive for a healthy pregnancy?
Okay. I love this question. Number one, your fertility does not fall off a cliff at age 35. Okay. And
You heard it from her.
this number is really important. And the reason why it's even called advanced maternal age is because we do know, though, at age 35, you do start to have more genetically abnormal eggs. You're about at the place where half your eggs will be normal and half will be abnormal. That is not every egg. That is not every ovulation. But we do start to see that pregnancy rates naturally start to go down because you're ovulating an abnormal egg more of the time. And we start to see more miscarriage tick up a little bit.
Okay.
Now, these numbers become much more profound after age 37. So after age 37, when we get to 38 and beyond, then we start to see the percentage of normal eggs dropping. So at 38, it's about 1/3 of your eggs are going to be genetically normal. Okay. And at 40, you're going to see it closer to 20 to 25%. So we see that cliff does occur. At 42, it's even lower, 10 to 15%. So we really do see a cliff happen, but it's not yet. It also, when you're out of eggs, isn't the end all be all, or having a lower egg count's not the end all be all, but your egg quality becomes even more important because those eggs have been sitting in your body longer. The kindergartners are going to get out of line just because tincture of time. So in my opinion, this is when you owe it to yourself to do everything that you can. So number one, if you say, I want to get pregnant in the near future, but not yet, and maybe I'm approaching or age 35, we'll say in that 35, 38 range, track your cycles. So what you're already starting to do. If you are on hormonal contraception, I think this would be a great time to come off of it and start to learn to track your cycle, because if it's abnormal, we want to get you in and try to get to the root cause now. We don't want to waste that time in a couple of years when you're actually trying.
And what would you say the length of time to stop birth control before you want to start trying?
At a minimum, I say 3 months. I really like 6 months as a better metric, just so that you can really see more cycles under your belt. And if something is abnormal, it gives you time to investigate it. I have to say in that same breath, if you stop your birth control, you can get pregnant. So if you're not quite ready to get pregnant, make sure you're preventing with other ways, because you can absolutely get pregnant from stopping the pill. But the point here is, if we're trying to optimize our chances when we're ready to try and we're not ready to try it quite yet, understanding your cycle, understanding when you ovulate, that's going to be key. So track your cycles. And that's more than with just an app, right? Because we know that apps can be incorrect a large portion of the time. So if you feel your middle schmerz, fantastic. You know when you're ovulating, and you can track based on just a calendar your follicular and your luteal phases. Other great ways can be with ovulation predictor kits. So those are urinary-based kits where you take them. Usually we say start them about 5 days before you think you're going to ovulate. I recommend you take one between 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's a urinary-based kit trying to detect that LH surge.
Okay.
So when you see the positive on that test, you don't need to take any more, but that is usually the day before you ovulate. So if you get the positive and you're trying to get pregnant, then we recommend intercourse that day and the next.
Okay.
But if you are just tracking your cycles, you get the positive, consider the next day ovulation. And one of my favorites is cervical mucus monitoring, which a lot of people get kind of squeamish about. But cervical mucus is based on the idea that physiologically, these are all what we call fertility awareness methods, because they're signs from your body that you're more fertile. So cervical mucus, as your estrogen rises, your cervical mucus is going to change. So the cervix is the entry point to the uterus. The cervical mucus, earlier than that, is a barrier. It doesn't want anything to get in the uterus or cause an infection. And as estrogen rises, it wants to prepare itself to allow sperm to come through. So the cervical mucus becomes sticky and stretchy, and we consider that like an egg white. And so that's called type 4 cervical mucus, and that is tightly correlated with the day of ovulation. So I recommend, if you're trying to get pregnant, you want to track cervical mucus, you don't have to do anything weird or gross. You just, if you wipe when you go to the bathroom, before you go to the bathroom. So sit down on the toilet, wipe, and look at the toilet paper. And when you notice that really sticky, clear, egg white discharge, that's going to be your type 4 cervical mucus, and that's correlated with ovulation. So that's a really easy, free way to track as well. And then there's a lot of great options when it comes to temperature-based tracking for basal body temperature. I love natural cycles, but there's a lot of wearables to make it a lot easier too, with the Oura Ring or even Apple Watch that can target this temperature.
Accurate?
They are pretty accurate.
Awesome.
And so they lose some accuracy if your cycles are irregular, but especially if you have regular cycles, that can be a really nice way where you don't have to think much about it. And you can start to learn those predictive patterns. And what I see is, after somebody tracks for a while, if they have regular periods, they will start to know what's reliable or not. And they don't have to do everything. They may not even have to track as intensely because their cycle is on such a really nice pattern. But that's something most people don't do until they're struggling. I see so many people who stop birth control. They say, oh, we're going to try, but not really try, not prevent, right? And to me, that's wasted time, especially as we get older.
It goes by quick too. And that's something that's hard too, is like with our second, when we were like, okay, we're going to start trying. Like, I didn't think it was going to take 10 months, or else I would have started trying earlier, right? It goes by really fast.
It does. And you start to really obsess over every detail and what are you doing wrong. So save yourself that, right? Prepare yourself. So learn to track your cycles ahead of time. Okay. If your periods are irregular, go get an evaluation. If you have, let's say a less optimal lifestyle for a pregnancy, start to change that now. Start to, eat for fuel for a pregnancy. That's those healthy nutrients we talked about, prioritizing the sleep, changing your exercise. And if you're doing something like you are, you say, hey, I have this big life goal, or my patient who's running the marathon, that's okay. But keep tracking your cycle throughout it.
Check in with yourself.
Check in with yourself and really pay extra attention to the thing you're going to cut out is, dinner with friends. You're going to get sleep, right? Or you're going to make sure that you're eating enough calories, enough good nutritional food, and really make sure that you're prioritizing that hormonal health and you have the discussion with your partner.
Yes.
If you're 35 and older and you've not gotten pregnant after 6 months of trying, that's considered infertility. And when we recommend a fertility evaluation, although I always think you can always proactively get tested earlier.
Okay.
I really have a hard time with the current state of infertility being you have to fail at something before we'll even do testing.
I remember calling and being like, hey, I can't get pregnant. And they're like, well, you have to wait until this amount of time.
Try a little bit longer.
And I was like, okay, like that's defeating.
Yeah, that is really based on this public health idea that if something's not super common, then we don't need to test everybody for it because it's going to utilize healthcare funds or potentially cause undue stress on people. My argument there is that fertility is becoming more common. And I've seen so many patients over time who've been forced to try. Let's say they were in your shoes and they were told, well, try for a year and then call back. And then when they did call back, they found out her egg count was super low, or she had endometriosis, or he had no sperm. And then they've been trying this set amount of time with almost no chance of getting pregnant. So even though that's the quote unquote medical recommendation, here in the US, we live in a payer system where often fertility testing and treatment's not covered anyway. And so you can decide, hey, this is really important to me and I want to get information earlier. So the 6 months, if you're over age 35, is the longest you should try. I see patients all the time who see me earlier. And we kind of do the basic workup. How many eggs do you have? Talk through if you're ovulating. Do a semen analysis. Look at our uterine tubal anatomy. And if everything comes back normal, maybe we do say, hey, great, everything's good. Maybe we want to try the 6 months. And then we already have this data, so we know what we'll do if you're not pregnant. But I'm finding more and more things that are actually underlying that then we're targeting or treating or trying to optimize.
So to be able to get that evaluation, you're saying the majority of the time you can pinpoint like, here's what's maybe causing that challenge.
We're often finding something. And if we're not, then okay, well, that gives you a little more confidence when you're trying instead of this mental gymnastics, which is so anxiety provoking. I'm sure when you took you 10 months after taking 2, you were like, am I doing everything right? Could there be something wrong? What should we do? And if you get tested earlier, you might enter that phase saying, okay, at least we know none of these big things are wrong. That doesn't guarantee we're going to get pregnant. No test is going to guarantee your fertility, but it gives you some mental reprieve that you've tested some of the most common things that are wrong.
Right. You're ruling things out.
Yeah. And setting yourself up for success. And if you're not having success, you're already tied into a system where you can then get a quicker appointment, have a game plan, and get started on treatment sooner. Because we know as we do get older, time is your most valuable commodity.
And I'm feeling that. Also, too, I am a lot healthier than I was when I was trying with my other 2. More consistent with my nutrition and fitness overall. So I'm excited to kind of see what that journey will look like when we are ready. I'm also nervous because of the MTHFR. So I want to talk about that for a second. MTHFR gene deficiency, I'm sure that you can explain it a lot more gracefully than I can, but it's pretty prevalent these days.
It is pretty prevalent.
And how does it impact fertility?
Let's think about a few different things. So number one is, you heard me say earlier how important folic acid is. So folic acid is an essential nutrient in cell division. And when your body is growing a human, there is a lot of cell division happening when it comes to that embryo going from one cell to millions that it's going to become. So it is rapidly growing and dividing, and folic acid is so important in that process, especially when it comes to those early pregnancy stages. So that implantation, the placental development, the early embryo growth. That being said, MTHFR is a mutation in folate metabolism. So if we think about folic acid, it comes into your body and it has to be metabolized into a usable form. And we see that people who have MTHFR may have a harder time in that metabolic process. And this is one of those stages where I tell people 2 things can be true at one time, meaning what may be best for you in your regular life may also not be what's best for you when you're trying to get pregnant. So one thing we know is that people with MTHFR in their regular life may be able to benefit from a different type of folic acid supplement, like a methylated folate, which is a more downstream metabolite. And I see a lot of patients feel better on those and like being on that. However, if we look at studies, the only studies that have shown that folic acid can prevent birth defects, specifically what we call neural tube defects. And these are defects of the brain and the spinal cord. So they're disastrous. The only studies that showed we can prevent those is with folic acid itself and not methylated folate.
Interesting.
Okay. And the reason, is probably that's what the study was done. And nobody's ever going to repeat the study with methylated folate because you would never subject half the group to something that potentially could cause a birth defect. So I don't think we'll ever see that study. Physiologically, should a downstream metabolite be just the same? I think it probably should. However, the placenta is such an interesting and fascinating organ, and certain things pass through it in different ways than others. So even though methylated folate gives you great blood levels of folic acid, right, and can help patients who might have MTHFR, they even feel better, they have less anemia when they take methylated folate. I recommend when you're trying to get pregnant that you take both, a methylated folate and a folic acid.
Okay.
That way, you're kind of doing what's best for your body, but you're also preventing a potential birth defect because that is such a severe outcome. It's not worth it.
So is there a higher percentage or risk of birth defect or miscarriage, or is that the same thing?
Yeah. So birth defect, there's a higher rate of birth defects if you're not taking folic acid. Okay. Now, what we worry about with MTHFR and just in general when it comes to part of this process is that if you don't have enough folic acid in that early stages of cell division, will you have miscarriages? And could it be a part of the miscarriage pathway for patients with recurrent pregnancy loss? I'll stress that studies haven't shown that. Mm-hmm. So as you said earlier, there's a high prevalence of people who have the MTHFR mutation, and we're not seeing that is a cause of miscarriage on a population-based level. That being said, I went through a lot of recurrent pregnancy loss myself. I had 4 pregnancy losses.
Your story is pretty profound, yeah.
Before I had my kids, and I've been in those shoes. And I also think studies have their own limitations. We practice evidence-based medicine by looking at the available data that exists to us and making the best decisions based on it. But in the same breath, there's a lot of personalization to medicine and how one person's body functions that's not equal to the others. Sure. So that's why I think if you do have MTHFR, it's important to have both forms of folic acid, what your body needs to function best, and what's been proven to prevent birth defects, to try to just eliminate that from being something that could be a problem for you.
Progesterone was one that they were like, you have to be on immediately. Is that pretty?
Did you have pregnancy loss?
No.
I'm presuming they put you on progesterone because of the ovulation issues, because of ovulating later in your cycle. When we think about progesterone, it's made from that corpus luteum. Mm-hmm. So the corpus luteum is what is formed after ovulation, but from the follicle. And essentially a way to say this, when we have those luteal phase issues or that poor progesterone production as that first stage of ovulatory dysfunction, we can see that be a problem in any woman who's also having issues ovulating or ovulating late or longer in your cycle. So progesterone is not typically a treatment for MTHFR, but it can be for some of that ovulatory dysfunction. And I think if they were worried about you ovulating day 20 of your cycle, that's probably why they empirically put you on progesterone to try to help that luteal phase out. Because progesterone really is key. It opens and closes the implantation window. And for your first 10 weeks of pregnancy, progesterone is exclusively made from the corpus luteum. So I
think my levels were obviously low.
Yeah. So if you're not ovulating well, you're not kind of making a good foundation for a corpus luteum, you may not make enough progesterone, and this can contribute to pregnancy loss. This is a nuanced discussion because when you get pregnant, HCG from the pregnancy, that's the hormone that we check on a pregnancy test. HCG binds to the same receptors as LH, meaning HCG rescues the corpus luteum or stimulates progesterone production as well. So I said earlier, the corpus luteum only lives for 2 weeks, asterisk, unless you get pregnant, because that pregnancy comes in, HCG is being made, and now that corpus luteum can chug out high levels of progesterone. Well, if the pregnancy is not growing and dividing normally, let's say it's genetically abnormal, HCG levels aren't going to rise fast enough, and it's not going to stimulate enough progesterone, and that's going to lead to a miscarriage, and it's supposed to, right? Humans can't have litters of children. We don't get a lot of pregnancies in our life. So your body is supposed to protect you against those abnormal embryos that aren't going to make it. So by not making enough progesterone, that's the feedback from the abnormal pregnancy to tell your body, hey, this isn't normal. We're not going to make enough progesterone so that we can miscarry this baby and try again with an embryo that is going to divide appropriately. So it's a nuanced discussion with progesterone because physiologically, that's part of how our body's protecting us against some abnormal embryos. But there is low progesterone with ovulatory dysfunction that can cause miscarriage. And most of us in the field say it's a lot easier to help you ovulate better, give you supplemental progesterone, and know that we're covering that base so that we're not risking having you lose a potentially normal pregnancy.
That's really helpful. So you've mentioned so many great things when it comes to what to start with: nutrition, movement, sleep, recovery. What about some stops? Are there like non-negotiables that you're like, hey, scratch this off the list?
I think if I could influence everybody to stop drinking alcohol, it'd be the first thing that I could do. It's so prevalent in our society and so normalized that there is such a huge hesitation to stop that. And I understand that. But I think if anybody who's ever had a sip of alcohol before, they know it's inflammatory, right?
Absolutely.
There is no debating what it does to your body. I say, eliminating it would be my goal. Definitely, if you could be pregnant, do not drink alcohol. But if you're not somebody who's going to eliminate it, that's not realistic for you, then I say, hey, your body's going to be able to handle those small inflammatory bumps better when you treat your body kinder and anti-inflammatory on the majority of days. And whether that bump is from alcohol or from cake or sugar or processed foods, it's not that these are nevers, but if you already lead a really inflammatory life and you're exposed to a lot of toxins and you're not sleeping and you're chronically stressed and you drink coffee for half the day and you're not eating that healthy diet, then yeah, having the alcohol at night or eating the sugar and the processed food, your body can't heal from it. But if you have this foundation of I'm moving my body for my hormones, I'm building skeletal muscle, I'm getting good sleep, I'm eating a lot of nutritious food full of fruits and vegetables, then if you do have some of these, one-time glass of wine at dinner with your friends or a celebration cake, your body's gonna be able to handle that inflammatory bump and it's not a big deal to you as much. So I always wanna impart that we never wanna look at something as all or nothing and say, well, I'm never gonna do that, so I'm just gonna drink every single day.
Right.
It's really the sum of all of these different decisions that matter. But if I could have you drink less, none would be ideal. Less would be whatever you can get down to. It should be very much the more occasional thing. Marijuana is very harmful for hormonal health for both men and women, and it's also been so normalized, especially for sperm health. I will see patients not disclose that they're using cannabis, go through an IVF cycle with disastrous outcomes, especially when that male genome kicks in. You can see in the embryos, the first few days of life of an embryo are all from the mitochondria, all the female genome. That male genome kicks in on day 3, and you can just see embryos stop developing. And I'll go back and then say, hey, what have we not shared because something's going on? And more times than I can count, it's cannabis use. And stopping it will give us a completely different outcome. Wow. So that's a big no for me, in addition to smoking cigarettes, which isn't as common right now. But smoking cigarettes causes increased DNA damage in eggs and sperm and lowers your egg count. Women go into menopause earlier if they smoke cigarettes. So we can't undo the past, and we're not trying to shame anybody, but we're definitely trying to make changes now more proactively so that we have a healthier lifespan, health span, and an easier time getting pregnant.
And that's what I love about this conversation is that you're stating science, you're stating the facts, you're stating the truths. And I do feel like there's a lot of like judgment from people of like, hey, I can still enjoy my wine and do this and that, but it's like science doesn't lie. I know being in the pharmaceutical world, studying different disease states, inflammation is the root cause of all disease. We all know that. And I feel like that's been a common theme throughout this conversation. So thank you for preaching that. For me, I saw my life completely change when I cut out alcohol, when I cut out artificial sweeteners, sugar, weed. I smoked a lot of weed in college. And when I cut all of that out, it's like
it's night and day difference.
Think better, perform better, feel better, speak better. It's crazy.
And I tell patients this too, when you're functioning with chronic inflammation from your lifestyle, from the chemicals you're exposed to, you mentioned endocrine disruptors earlier.
Yes.
I mean, there's so many that are prevalent in your world that you can't control, that you really have to control the ones that you can.
I will. And I will say that's one that I'm like, I use like when it comes to my household cleaners and a lot of the products I put on my body. Now perfume is one that I'm still like, oh, so hard. I do love my perfume, but like that probably contributes a lot as well, right?
Again, it's probably, the one-time perfume here and there is less impactful than the things that we use every single day. And so I always say, if we're a perfume lover, let's make it an occasion thing and not an everyday. But I mean, a lot of it, the shampoos, the face wash, the makeup, the kitchen products, the touching the airline tickets, the thermal receipts, the plastics, how we just live in a world that's so chemicalized. Those things really do add up as well, right? They're literally called endocrine disrupting chemicals because they disrupt your hormonal system.
Right.
And I think that we just have normalized so much. I think back when I was in college and I would drink water out of the plastic water bottles all the time, like leave it in my car or still drink it. You just don't even think twice about it. And we know that that has more chemicals in it than just filtered tap water. So I think that we really have to start learning about these things to prioritize our hormone health, our whole body health, and not just our fertility, although our fertility is essentially important, but your health span, your longevity, because these things all do add up. They all contribute to that inflammatory burden, which really does make it harder to get pregnant, but harder to be healthy and be your healthiest self.
I love that. I also want to add on too, that it's not even just about the woman trying to get pregnant or the husband, but like the kids too. Like that's something that I think trying to make my household less toxic with glass Tupperware and glass bottles to drink our water out of, things like that. Household cleaners, like I love Ranch Basics, like anything that I can do to try to take out those toxic elements, I'm doing, because I'm thinking about their health long term as well.
I love that you're thinking about that, and you're younger than me, but just thinking about how I grew up in the era of the 80s, right? I literally, everything was in the microwave. Everything was packaged. All these ultra processed foods, bleach cleaner everywhere, plastic. And really just, we didn't know any better. And I do think that is a contributing factor to why we're seeing more people struggle with hormonal health now. And as we get older, as we see women approach those upper 30s and 40s, because of what we were exposed to earlier in our life when we didn't know better. And so what you do when you're pregnant impacts what genes are turned on and off in your child. It's called epigenetics, which I think is just so fascinating, but it impacts their long-term health. The decisions you're making right now for your children is going to help set them on a different health journey and pathway than how you grew up and how I grew up. So I think that's such an important thing, that these aren't quick fix changes, in my opinion. You're living proof that changing your life and living a more anti-inflammatory life changes how you feel, how you function, your happiness level. And I tell patients this, once you don't even know what it's holding you back when you live this chronic inflammation. You're functioning at less than optimal and your body's just in survival mode. And when you prioritize your health, maybe not for getting pregnant, maybe just to be healthy, and you start making these changes, you're going to feel like a new person. And patients come back to me all the time and say, I just didn't even understand what cloud I was functioning over and how it was impacting me and how different I feel now that I've prioritized my health.
Absolutely. I mean, that's something I look back on, and it's almost like I see a different person. Like, I still love her, obviously. She went through a lot, but it's like, wow, to see how far I've come and how much better I feel. It's pretty powerful.
It's really impactful. And I love that you're sharing that publicly too, because that really impacts other people and allowing them to see, maybe if they're not feeling their best self, that there's something they can do about it. They're not just stuck.
I think also too, it's like consistency. I preach on that all the time. It takes time, but like doing these little things every single day to add up.
Yeah, the sum. It's the sum of all these choices that matter. Each little one. You don't have to be, tell patients, you don't have to be perfect. It's not all or nothing, but each little thing you do in the right direction, those all add up. So be proud of yourself and be proactive in thinking about, how am I going to make these changes?
I completely agree. I feel like I could talk all day long. I have a whole list of topics, but I feel like we covered so many amazing things. Tell us what's next for you. I mean, what you've built is so incredible. So what are you working towards next?
My current passion project is my book, The Fertility Formula, which is on pre-order right now, and it comes out in spring of 2026. And it is literally this discussion put in a book, right? Going through your body. I say the first section is all facts about your body that you don't know. The second part's about getting pregnant or infertility and learning to track your cycles and what you should do if you're struggling. But the third and fourth part are all about inflammation, your gut health, learning about how to improve outcomes based on your lifestyle, and really showing you the data between what exists in the literature and what we know, and giving really clear recommendations for what I wish everybody could do. And I will say, even though it doesn't come out till the spring, if you pre-order it, there's a kind of 30-page booklet all about like how to impact your hormones with your lifestyle. So a lot of the things we talked about, really breaking it down into actionable steps. And people get access to an IVF course that I've created to really help support you if you're going through IVF. Because I know it's a long time to wait when books go out in pre-order, but that is like my third child, literally, because I have poured everything into it and really feel like this discussion about inflammation and being more proactive in your fertility and really being able to support your own self and be an advocate for your health isn't talked about enough.
It really is not. And I'm really excited about your book. I'm going to go pre-order it. And especially as I'm kind of stepping into this new chapter next year of starting over with that fertility journey and trying to get pregnant, I feel like you're going to be such a light throughout that process. I already have. And like, I really hope that all the listeners tuning in today can take away something and apply it to their own life, whatever stage they're in when it comes to their hormones or fertility journey. So thank you so much for coming on. One last question I have for you, I ask all of my guests, is around empowerment. Obviously, that's the theme of the show. And I've seen it mentioned on your website and on your social media before, the theme of empowerment. But what does empowerment mean to you?
To me, it really means stepping in and owning your own body and your own self. And a lot of times when that comes to health, that means feeling confident, advocating for yourself, and really saying, this is what I need, and setting boundaries when it comes to both your personal and your professional life. But you've got one body, you have one life. You deserve to have that functioning the best that it can and to feel your absolute best. And that's really what empowerment is to me.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I feel like we could just talk all day. So we'll have to do it again.
Go ahead to and also put the link to where you guys can pre-order her book in the show notes and where you guys can find her, which do you want to say your Instagram so people know?
So you can find me on Instagram at Natalie Crawford MD, and I have a YouTube channel by the same name.
Amazing.
And I also practice here in Austin at a practice I started called Fertility.
You're just doing it all.
We're trying.
All right. Well, we're going to have a round two.
Agreed. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. It really helps us grow and bring you more great content. See you guys next week.